Hello, my friends. This is Lynda Lippin, and welcome to the Pilates Goddess podcast. Welcome back, my friends, to the Pilates Goddess podcast. And today we have part 2 of my fascinating discussion with Dr. Sam Slattery. I hope you enjoy it, and I really hope that you take his information to heart because it is all scientifically based and really, really important in the book. But what I realized happened was we went through these years, remember, where they just told everyone they should snack all the time, right? You should never allow yourself to be hungry or your blood sugar to drop like that. So you should just be eating like 8 times a day and just snacking all the time. And it turned out that that's not really how it all works, that we do need time to digest our food and kind of clear stuff out before we introduce new food. And realistically, all we're doing is saying maybe like for 12 hours at night. Shouldn't eat.
So the first thing is, so people say, well, where do you start when you do the work that you do? Where do you start? Because there's so much knowledge out there. And so I go, well, here's what I do. So the first thing is I look at traditional peoples on the planet. I enjoy history. So I look back into history and see how our forebears lived. And then I sort of go, all right, well, that's how we evolved. So we clearly didn't evolve to have 3 meals a day because it wasn't available 3 times a day. There wasn't enough food. And then I look at traditional cultures around the planet. And like I said, I'm sort of back in Africa now. So I look at the way people in Africa live. They don't eat 3 meals a day. They don't have enough food to eat 3 meals a day. And they're pretty healthy because of it. I mean, there are issues. Don't get me wrong. I'm not suggesting that Africa is full of super fit and healthy people. But on the whole, it's not bad. I mean, there are some issues, for sure there's some issues, but it's getting better, and infectious diseases are disappearing because of better sanitation and proper toilets appearing in proper latrines and things appearing in villages, and the things are better. So the infectious diseases get better. Vaccines, of course, made an enormous difference. That really has changed things since I was there 40 years ago. But at the end of the day, they don't eat 3 times a day. And actually, if you go back in history, nobody did. So this is clever marketing. So how on earth do we go from three times a day to you got to snack every? I mean, if it's the same old thing. I've made this statement before. This sort of stuff is ludicrous. The statements that people come up with and throw out into your blood sugar will go low if you don't eat 8 times a day. Well, whoever made that statement shows that it demonstrates a complete lack of knowledge about the physiology of the human body. The complete lack of knowledge about the physiology of fat, which is entirely normal. The fat stores are there for a reason. They're there to tide us over during periods of lean times, which traditional peoples suffer from on a regular cyclical basis. You know, that's different from famine, but we can certainly do very well for 30, 40 days without really very much food at all. As long as you've got access to water, you won't be any fat stores left in your body, that's for sure. Because you'll use it all up. And of course, you'll start using other bits too. If it really you get into trouble, you'll start to use muscle and all sorts of other bits and pieces to feed the body. But normal people can live perfectly fine on 1,200 calories a day. Anything above, 16, after that, it's becoming excessive. Well, I've just come out of a well-known establishment that's a purveyor of coffees, shall I say. And I just stood there and I watched. It was absolutely, it's mind-boggling to me. The sort of drinks that people thought was okay. And I could tell from some of these people that this wasn't the only one they were going to have today. And they probably do that on a regular basis. And I'm like, that's an entire day's calories in there. And it's a snack because you've gone shopping. And then we wonder why people are all overweight and why we've got a diabetes and hypertension and obesity crisis. Like I say, it's not none of this is rocket science. It's just really obvious stuff. Really, it is. But there's been such a cultural drift that people don't people just think that's the norm now. They think the way that we look is the norm, but it isn't the norm. It's not what a human being should look like. Yeah.
Right. So, so you basically your five are what we're eating or diet, right?
Yeah.
Functional exercise, which I'm a huge fan of as well. Done moderately.
Yeah. Yes.
So maybe 15, 30 minutes a day, like walking, doing things, doing some stretching, doing some yoga or Pilates just to get kind of things moving.
Yeah.
And then
and some
other things,
work.
right? And then other things as we like for cardio and getting the heart rate up and getting that done.
Yeah.
Then we move into the me time, the self-reflecting time, a little bit of mindfulness work and in meditation and kind of brain training. And sleep.
Absolutely, sleep. And then, stress management's the fifth one.
And stress management.
Which is really, really important because, like I say, you can't get rid of stress, but you can manage stress. Stress puts a strain on the system, puts strain onto the neuroimmune system that is if you want, the housekeeping and governing part of the system of the body. But you can mitigate again. You can engineer against strain. That's what engineers do with buildings, and you can do it with your own body by following the first four, for starters, like eating a healthy diet in moderation, in modest amounts. I actually did paraphrase Michael Pollan because I thought it was one of those great, to me, it's one of those great lines of all time. It's absolutely brilliant. Eat basically proper food, mainly plants, and not a lot of them. Not a lot of it. I mean, that's a real paraphrase now, but I mean, that's essentially what he said. He was genius because he's completely correct. So that you do that, and then the exercise needs to be functional. So I really push this. I'm a big fan of the concept of CrossFit. I'll say the name. Personally, I'm not into the sort of I'm not into the competitive part of it myself, but most people are. But the really interesting thing for me is the concept of functional fitness. I'm in my 60s now, and there's nothing that I want to do that I can't do. I mean, I was climbing a mast on a 60-foot mast the other day on a boat. And I'm not bragging. It's just I've looked after myself, and I work at keeping some strength, and so I do strengthening exercises. And actually make a point of doing actually doing push-ups and sit-ups and squats and things. You don't need a gym.
Because
you don't need a gym for any of this. You just do it.
And we live in I think culturally, and kind of going back to the idea of the cooperative, right, is that a lot of times our aches and pains and our joint stuff is really from the inflammation that we're having from the stress and from all the other shit that we're putting into our systems.
Yeah, totally.
And then you have folks, as I go through this with my clients all the time, because now I'm specializing in osteoporosis.
Right.
And then, women over 50 who are experiencing joint pain, back pain, and all of that. And they're sitting there going, my knees hurt. I can't do squats. And I'm like, fine, get a chair. Just get out your chair, sit on your chair and stand back up. And sit back down and stand back up. And what's interesting is they're willing to do that with me. They'll do that. And then maybe I'll have them grab the 4-pound bag of dog food and sit down and stand up with that. And we'll change the feet positions and maybe we'll do it on one leg or, and kind of advance through that. But I'm like, guys, you need to be able to do deadlifts so you can learn how to pick things up off the floor and do it correctly. You need to do squats because sitting and standing is an important skill that I personally like to have. I'm like, push-ups will help you if you fall. It will literally help you like move things away. You need to be able to pick stuff up and put the bag in the overhead compartment. Like there are just certain movements that the body needs to be able to do on a regular basis and continue doing. And that, for me is extremely functional. And that's how I teach it.
Yeah, that is.
I'm like, fine. You don't want to do something called a squat. We're just going to sit and stand a bunch of times because that's the same fucking thing.
No, I agree with you. And the thing is, you touched on something that's really important here. So there is this enormous mind-body connection, all right? And it's not that it's all in your head. I mean, this is one of the things, when because I see all these functional patients, and what the implication from everybody they've seen before they get to me or somebody like me is that it's all made up in their head. They're being neurotic, which is really that's a really unpleasant thing for a physician or anybody else to imply to somebody, because that really is so judgmental. It's just horrible.
That's just mean.
It is. Yes. No, I would say it is mean. And I've been there. So it's really an unpleasant thing. But having said that, the story that we run in our head does create our own reality. And I do mention that in the book, and actually there's a passage in there that sort of demonstrates that. But if you like, I can't do squats because it hurts my knees. Okay, you're probably not going to do squats, and you're probably going to continue to have painful knees, right? But how about my knees are painful because, as you say, there's something going on here. There's some inflammation here. So how about I'm going to change my attitude? This is uncomfortable to do squats, but I'm going to have a go for the next 3 months, just with some help if needs be, and including an anti-inflammatory, but I'd rather you changed your diet and got some more sleep and drank a little bit less alcohol. But I'm going to have a go and see what happens. And I'm going to put up with a little bit of discomfort and see if it works. And the strange and wondrous thing is, for most people, they get better. Their pains go away. And they're like, well, how does that work? And I've still got a bit of mild osteoarthritis. And I go, well, that's because you've changed, one, the way you think about things, right? So you sort of become more accepting of your reality. But two, you're actually taking some physical exercise and moving the joint, which produces more lubricant. And when you've got more lubrication in there, the strange, funny thing is, it sort of works better. And then change the other things and the inflammation settles down. And then if you do a little bit of self-reflection and do a bit of me time, you'll realize that actually you have weeks where you're more inflamed than others. And that's the weeks that you ate too much meat, or you went out and stayed out too late because you or your partner had to go out to 2 cocktail parties, or some meetings that ran too late, or life is stressful, or one of the kids got sick, or there's financial problems, or whatever it is, and that you are literally more inflamed. So for physical reasons, sometimes for emotional reasons, for all sorts of reasons. And that's the whole point of me time. And then you start to see the patterns. And you go like, okay, well, maybe I'll drink a little bit less for 2 or 3 weeks and see what happens. It's not like you can't have a drink. I've never gone to somebody, very rarely. Sometimes I meet people who are really in a bad place. Like I just tell them bluntly, like, you don't change, you're going to die. So that's your choice. That's fine. Again, because they're like, well, that's pretty blunt. And I go, well, you're not paying me to go, oh, well, maybe, if you can,
right.
No, I can tell you right now, I've just looked at your liver function tests in your liver from a gastroenterological point of view and the rest of your lifestyle. Believe me, you carry on like this for another 2 years, you're going to be dead. And that's fine. That's totally okay by me. It might not be okay to the rest of your family or your kids.
Right.
And more importantly, I think when you get to the last little bit, you'll be like, perhaps that wasn't such a good plan. So it's not a judgment. I just want you to go to that place with making an active choice. Because some people tell me, yeah, well, that's fine. Stuff it. I'm going to carry on because I like drinking and I like doing all these things. And frankly, if I'm dead in 2 years, I'm dead. And I go, that's cool. Hey, have at it. It really, and I mean that genuinely. I'm not here to tell you how to live your life. My job is to teach you and explain to you the consequences and the science in terms of the physiology behind where this is most likely to end up. Because there'll always be the outlier, there's always the outlier. There's always the person that drank every day, smoked 40 cigarettes and made it to 92. Always.
We all have that relative. We all have that relative in our past, right? We all have one at least. Yeah. But, it was interesting for me because it was really the sleeping issue that got me to stop drinking. Right. Because I really started to notice a huge difference in sleep quality. Yeah. Now, of course, in New York, we have legal marijuana. And so everything's changed in kind of a good way.
No, like I said earlier, the strange thing to me is that the most toxic drug on the planet, probably, arguably, is the one that we allow to be legal.
Oh, and the two, if you take that in tobacco.
Yeah, absolutely, exactly.
Yeah.
And we could go, and I would say sugar's a drug, so I'd say there's the three. Because certainly you're addicted to it naturally, and of course we're fed that the addiction's fed, and then it's very tough to get people off sugar. So when people struggle, I tell them, look, you've got to approach this like you're an addict, which people find offensive. But but again, we're back to, would you want me to wrap it up in nice sort of sugary, excuse the pun, words, or do you want the straight up truth? You're a sugar addict, so let's approach it like that, and then maybe we can start to get you some assistance. Because that's the important part of all this. My job is to assist you and teach you and get you to the right place to other people who can assist you and support you and teach you. It's not my job to go, you need to stop eating sugar. I mean, okay, so great, thanks. That's really helpful. I should actually, doctor, that's a really arrogant statement, and actually really irritate me because I know that. Deep in my heart. It's like, when I smoked, there was nobody more irritating than somebody going, oh, you need to, that's really bad for you. You need to stop smoking. I was like, yeah, thank you very much. I know that. Thanks. Thank you. And not. So it's irritating. But if somebody said to me, look, do you want some help trying to stop smoking? Because, I think you feel better. I'd be like, well, go on then. Tell me, how can we do that? There's a very different approach. People need help. That's why I wrote the book. It's about helping people. It's giving people some hope that you don't have to stay like this, and you're not going to be judged. That's why I love Buddhism. There's no judgment in Buddhism. We don't judge people. I don't care how you live your life as long as you don't harm other people physically or mentally.
Right.
But if you're not harming somebody else physically or mentally, and hopefully if you're not really harming yourself, because that's a bit of a problem, then I don't care how you live. So it's not in my business, and it's not my business how you kill yourself, to be quite honest either. I mean, I know people who drive, high speed racing cars. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's a dangerous occupation. They jump out of airplanes. They do stunt work. I've got all sorts of fun friends who do all sorts of really very dangerous things with the full understanding that they could kill themselves or really badly injure themselves. But it's an active choice, and, that's what they've chosen to do. The trouble with everybody else is they're sleepwalking through life, in a sense, towards ill health and shortening their health span without really knowing that they're doing it. And that's the sad thing. And, I think for folks who don't even consider the kind of drug-like nature of sugar, I just, invite everybody to just remember that our body in reality will break everything down into sugar sooner or later. But we also get different nutrients and other things out of all of the other food that we need, so that glucose that our nervous system needs to run is basically just kind of an added bonus and is a small piece of that. Yeah. If you've got brain fog and if you're super, super tired, I can almost guarantee you that if you chug a Coke, you're going to be feeling a little bit brighter in a second. And that's that immediate effect of the sugar on your brain. Your brain's like, hello. But then you're not going to be feeling great a little while after that, because that initial hit is just going to go. You're going to feel horrible in about 3/4 of an hour as you crashing down as insulin overshoots.
Exactly. You're going to feel really great for 10 minutes and then done.
And it's not really clearing. I mean, it clears that sort of what people say is, I'm hypoglycemic. You know what's actually happening? If you've gone a long enough period without food, the body's actually trying to switch into fat metabolism. Because here's an interesting thing. Your brain does not need sugar. It doesn't need sugar. It runs very well on ketones, which are the breakdown products of fat. And so one of the things that we've lost, or a lot of people have lost, it's not all of us, because some of us have very good metabolic flexibility. I have great metabolic flexibility. I don't even notice these days, it's very short. I might get a little bit angry for maybe 15 minutes, but it's not usually Doesn't usually happen. So what's happening is, as you use up the carbohydrate stores, you start to switch into fat metabolism. Mm-hmm. And it's a little uncomfortable, and people feel that, as you say, foggy brains, one way of describing it, there's lots of, they just don't feel quite right. So the body's trying to switch into burning the fat stores. And you start to feel a bit hangry. And so what do? You go chug a Coke, you go and eat a sandwich, you go and get some carbs. And what that does is that switches the body directly right back into carbohydrate metabolism. So you never, ever go into fat metabolism. But we have and can live off both sources. In fact, we should live off both sources. So one of the things that exercise does for you is it improves your metabolic flexibility. That's what happens to marathon runners when they hit the wall. They've totally used up all their carbohydrate sources everywhere, and the body's switching into fat metabolism. And so there's this sort of period for a few minutes where they just really feel not very well. And then boom, they get their second wind. And that second wind is you've now switched into burning ketones, and now you're breaking down your fat stores, which is great if you've got too much of them. So the trouble is, because people don't like being uncomfortable, people don't like being hungry, they don't like that half hour when you first start to try and do this feeling, they don't allow their body to punch through, if you want, into a ketone metabolism or fat burning metabolism. So then that's part of the reason they can't lose weight, because they never get there. And that's why intermittent fasting is so helpful. But by the way, I hate this concept of intermittent because it's actually healthy eating. It's like normal eating. Like eat once or twice a day occasionally. It's like really, it's how your body evolved, and it will make you burn fat stores.
Right. Well, and the problem was then we had, Jack Dorsey and all these other guys coming out and being like, well, I only eat one meal a day and I only eat for an hour a day and I only do this. And then suddenly everyone's like, oh my God. So to do that, I have to just like starve myself and never eat.
It's just absolutely. I mean, the trouble with it, and it all sounds like really insulting to other people, and perhaps I am. How about we just start with some good old fashioned common sense?
Right.
And why don't we start with a little bit of good old fashioned history and a bit of anthropology and a bit of evolutionary history? Because that's a great place to start for me, because at the end of the day, that is how the human body evolved.
And that is what you outline very well in the book. That's actually what I like about the book, is that you don't just say what we should be doing or not doing, but you dive a little bit, not deep dive, right? Because we talked about that it's more of an overview, but you dive into enough of the science and you give us enough of the history and enough of the anthropological background, and then a nice list of resources to go to if we want to dive even deeper into it. Yeah. So that we sort of understand that, it's a social cooperative, it's a psychological cooperative, it's a physical cooperative, it's a cooperative of bacteria and viruses and funguses and all the things that make up us as people and that make up our entire world.
Yeah, absolutely.
And our entire universe. And that the closer basically we can get to playing well together.
Yes. Play. We could do a whole podcast on play. That's how you change people. That's the therapy, by the way. And people are out there wondering how you get better. Believe me, that may be my second book. The importance of play. Because having how you teach yourself. Yeah, absolutely. And having a good time is not turning off your brain with an anesthetic agent called alcohol. Having a good time is quite the opposite. Having a good time is actually keeping your brain sharp without the alcohol, and then having a good old play with your friends and a giggle and teasing and just, because if you think about it, this is a very important concept, because if you think about how children learn, how that neuroimmune system is molded and wired, it's through play. And children play well up to about the age of 12. And then you watch them begin to change the sort of the adultness, because it sort of gets beaten out of them, actually.
Right.
It's that sort of, I'm a big fan of Pink Floyd, The Wall. And if you never listened to Pink Floyd, The Wall, then your listeners should go listen to Pink Floyd, The Wall. Because
and that came out when I was how old? 12. Yes. Because I was in 6th grade and 7th grade listening to Pink Floyd, The Wall. And it spoke to all of my preteen angst right there.
Because we beat play out of people. And so I'm a big fan from a psychological and therapeutic point of view, I'm a big fan of reintroducing play in a form that's acceptable to individuals, and encouraging people and teaching them how to learn how to play again. Because that's how you rewire your brain for a lot of these problems that people say, well, I can't change the way I think. I'm still carrying this horrible burden of being assaulted or, God forbid, raped or molested as a child, and I can't escape it. And I go, come on, I can show you how to escape it. Because we're going to go, as onerous and as you might think this is, we're going to actually turn it into a bit of a game. We're going to end up laughing in a sense about the cruelty of life, because life is tough. That's a fundamental tenet of Buddhism. Frankly, right. Life is suffering. That's the first noble truth. But there are ways of mitigating against it. And play is very important in terms of it allows you to let go, but it's also how you rewire your brain. It's how you rewire the circuits. It's how you change the story. I say it's the way. It's a key component for me, and it's a very powerful tool. But people really struggle with it as adults to play again. They really do. So
we do.
We do. I love
even in my Pilates classes, like I make people laugh. I make jokes all the time. Absolutely. And sometimes people are just like, don't make me laugh right now, because I can't hold this position and laugh. But I'm like, if you're laughing, if you're talking to me, if we're having a conversation, number one, I know you're breathing. Number two, I know you're engaged.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's really kind of what I what I want from them in that moment.
And it might be the most therapeutic part of the class. The fact that you can actually laugh at yourself, because you can't do that posture because you physically can't do it anyway, because the shape's wrong, and you never will. So stop trying to copy me, because I've always been, I've been always much more flexible than you. So, but have a giggle about it. It's like, oh, look at that. This is sort of fun. Right. I got this far. And then have a laugh, because frankly, if you could look at a video of yourself, you look ridiculous.
Exactly.
I know I look ridiculous.
And
when I
we
do
also know for a fact that, I have all of these super tight people who are like, I wish I was mobile like you. And I'm like, you don't want my hypermobility.
Yeah, exactly.
And I got SI problems. There's all kinds of things that go along with the hypermobility. That's not a great thing either. Like we always want that other thing. The straight hair wants the curly hair, wants wants all of that.
Just be happy with who you are. And that's part of also what the book's about.
Just
be content with your life and who you are. Because, and again, not to bring it all back to Buddhism constantly, but people are stressed because they constantly want it to be something different. And they also, for some strange belief, it's not strange. I know why. Particularly in the West, we're sort of raised on what I call the Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs stories. It was all terrible. And then, and then the Shining Knight came along and rescued her, and everybody lived happily ever after. But I tell people that's not how the story actually went. What happened was they rode off down the track. She fell off and broke her neck, and then he had to look after her for the rest of her life. That's sort of how life happens. So we completely live this sort of, we live this life of entitlement. I'm entitled to enjoy good health. I'm entitled to never have anybody in my family pass away. I'm entitled to have my pets live forever. I'm entitled to this amount of money. Well, the trouble is that's not actually how it works. You're not entitled to any of these things. You're blessed if you get them, maybe, but then you spend a lot of times worrying about hanging on to them, and that makes you miserable potentially. So, it's about sort of just accepting life as it is. And sometimes life's really horrible. It's really tough, and we've all been there. And believe me, I'm no exception to that rule. And I've never met anybody who was. But sometimes it's wonderful. And so enjoy the wonderful bits. And then you have to sort of accept the other bits and sort of and try and find some humor in there, you know.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you think about it, we all laugh at back comedies. We just don't want it, just don't want it to happen to us, you know.
Right.
I mean,
We want it to happen to Rowan Atkinson
yeah,
and his character.
Yeah, absolutely. But at the end of the day, but we do find it funny, but we really struggle to do it with our partners and ourselves, you know, and to find humor in. So we make everything so flipping serious, and then we wonder why we're all so stressed out, and then we wonder why we're all so ill.
Right.
You know?
Right.
This is a sort of recipe for madness. You know, I'm not suggesting everything, but I mean, I read once walking to a pub in England and going to dinner with some people once, and up on the wall, it's like, stop taking it all so seriously. None of us get out alive.
None of us get out of this alive. That's it. We all get out of this the same way.
Absolutely.
So it's enjoying our time, you know, while we're here.
Well, and enjoy what's going on now. I mean, because, you know, you and I are having a good laugh here, but I mean, there's something could happen in 15 minutes and both of us might find ourselves in a very serious situation where it isn't so funny.
Right.
But you know what? That's the reality of life. But at least right now, because we're enjoying now and we're sort of engaged with each other and we're focused on now, and we're not thinking about yesterday or tomorrow or what's going to happen after we've been chatted to each other. We're sort of enjoying ourselves and we're sort of content. Well, I hope you're enjoying yourself anyway. Yeah. I am. But we're sort of content, and that's a nice place to be. And so that's a very healthy place to be. So, but
it is.
Because it's okay now. And the other thing is that, you know, nothing's forever. So it might be really uncomfortable today what is happening, but it probably will be different tomorrow. It might be more uncomfortable, or it might be less, but it'll be different. So that's another thing I just suggest to people, you know. Anyway, I've drifted away from the book a little bit, but it is about balance. And to me, it's all about balance.
It is. And it's about, you know, balancing within those kind of five elements, balancing within ourselves. So Dr. Sam, you're giving away 10 free copies of your paperback book. Yes.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
The first 10 people who are leaving a Kindle review on Amazon. Well, my Kindle review is going to be there in the next day or two.
Yeah, and then what I need is an address. So I just need an address. They can supply it to wherever. I don't.
So in the show notes,
email me.
Yeah. So in the show notes, I will have, you know, Dr. Sam at the bodycooperative.org. I will have your email. I will have the website. So when folks leave their reviews, they can just send their stuff on over to you, or just reach out to you if they have, you know, any more.
Yeah. They can go to my website. My website is www.thebodycooperative.org. It's not .com, thebodycooperative.org. And there's a message section there. Contact me. Just mention your show, and that's fine. And then I just get it sent directly from the printers. That's the sort of cool thing about modern printing. They just print books on demand, and I order it and send it to whoever you are, and it should appear within 3 or 4 days. And you know,
wonderful.
I hope you enjoy it.
Great. Well, hang on for a few seconds after. So, Dr. Slattery, thank you so much. It's been great to see you. Like, we're actually seeing each other. You guys are just listening to the audio, but I really wanted to actually see Dr. Slattery again after about 10 or 11 years of not seeing him. And I am so thrilled for this book. I am so thrilled for the work that you're doing, both for NHS in the UK, for the folks of Turks and Caicos, and for the folks in Malawi. I am so impressed with you and with the book. And you guys, if you just want a good, solid overview, truth-telling, fact and science-based, which you know is like all I deal with, guide to living a better life, grab and it's now what, $1.99 on Kindle?
Yeah, it'll be $1.99, and depending on when your podcast is a live podcast, it'll be $1.99 until next Tuesday. So that was for a week, and then it'll pop up to $6.99. But it's
and even at $6.99, that is not a lot of money for all of the goodness that you have in the book. If you want a non-judgmental outline on how to feel better and have a better quality of life for the rest of the time that you have here, pick up a copy of Dr. Sam Slattery's The Body Cooperative, and you will get the information that you need. So thank you so much for joining me, Sam.
Thank you very much for the invite, and I hope your listeners enjoy it. Yes, it is a good book. It's 2,000 words, all passed down to 58,000. Tons of information to come yet, which I'll put up on the blogs and probably in book 2. But yes, thank you. And I would encourage people to read it. There's a plan in there as well. So it really covers all the basics for everybody. I mean, that's why I wrote it. It's what I give my patients now. They actually just get handed a copy. You don't have to listen to me. Here, go ahead and read this. And there will be an audio book out before Christmas, which a lot of people like, and it will be in a male and a female. I'm reading the book myself, because I'm because I've got that British accent that people love so much in America. So I'm gonna capitalize on it.
Oh,
but I've also got a female voice reading it as well, because a lot of people prefer to listen to a female voice. So you'll have an option by Christmas to listen to a male or a female. And thank you. Enjoy.
Great. Thank you. So everybody, I hope you enjoyed this fabulous interview with Dr. Sam. We may actually have him back again. We might need to talk a little bit more about play. We might need to talk a little bit more about probiotics and gut microbiome and things like that. I do have more questions, but we've gone on for a while now. And I feel like if we're going to do that, we should maybe just do another episode. So everybody, thank you so, so much once again for listening to the Pilates Goddess podcast, for supporting, for sharing. And please take a look at the show notes for this episode, because it will have all of the information on getting yourself a free copy of the paper book of Dr. Sam Slattery's The Body Cooperative, as well as all of the ways to get in touch with him. I will talk to you guys soon. Bye. Thank you so much for listening to the Pilates Goddess podcast. Music brought to you by Nerd Salad. Please leave a review on Apple Podcasts, especially if you liked it. And please like, share, and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thanks.